I'll never forget the exact moment my son's wife looked me in the eye and said, "Margaret, you need to understand something. You're suffocating us. Daniel and I need space from you. Your constant presence in our lives is exhausting." The wine glass in my hand trembled slightly. We were sitting in their upscale dining room in La Jolla, the one I'd been invited to for what I thought was a pleasant family dinner. My 10-year-old grandson, Jake, was upstairs, presumably doing homework. Daniel, my only child, sat beside his wife Ashley, and he didn't say a word. He just looked down at his plate. "I see," I managed to say, setting down my glass carefully. The crystal made a soft clink against the mahogany table. Ashley continued, her voice taking on that tone I'd learned to recognize over the past 3 years, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "It's not personal. It's just that Daniel and I are building something here, and we need to focus on our own family unit. You understand, don't you? I'm 62 years old. I spent 30 years climbing my way to CFO of a mid-sized tech company in San Diego. I've negotiated million-dollar deals, survived corporate restructuring, and retired with a comfortable nest egg of just over $800,000, plus my paid-off home in Carlsbad and a healthy investment portfolio. I didn't get there by being naive. But this was my son. And despite everything I knew about reading people, about spotting red flags in business dealings, I wanted to believe that family was different. That family meant something more than the contracts and handshakes I'd spent my career analyzing. "Of course I understand," I said quietly. "I never meant to intrude." "You're not intruding, Mom." Daniel finally spoke up, but his voice lacked conviction. "Ashley just means that we're at a stage in our lives where we need to establish our own identity as a couple and as parents." I nodded. I smiled. I finished my dinner and left earlier than planned, citing a headache. As I drove my Mercedes back to my house in Carlsbad, I kept thinking about Ashley's eyes. There had been something in them, something beyond mere boundary setting, something that looked almost like calculation. My late husband, Robert, would have known what to say. He always did. But Robert had been gone for 4 years now, taken by a sudden heart attack at 63, just as we were planning our retirement adventures together. Sometimes I still reached for my phone to call him, to ask his opinion, before remembering he wasn't there to answer. The next few weeks were quiet. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't text. I respected their space as requested. Jake's 10th birthday came and went, and I sent a card with a generous check inside, but I wasn't invited to any celebration. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. Then, exactly 32 days after that dinner, Daniel called me. "Mom! Hey, sorry we've been so out of touch. Ashley and I have been absolutely swamped with this new business opportunity. But we'd love to have you over for dinner this Friday. Can you make it?" The enthusiasm in his voice was jarring compared to his silence at that last dinner. But I'm a mother, and despite my business instincts screaming caution, I said yes. Friday evening, I arrived at their house with a bottle of expensive wine, Camus Cabernet, Daniel's favourite. Ashley greeted me at the door with a warm hug that felt rehearsed. "Margaret, we've missed you so much. Come in, come in." Over dinner, they unveiled their plan. Daniel had been working with a partner to develop a new app, something to do with AI-assisted personal finance for young professionals. The technical details were impressive, I had to admit. Daniel had always been bright, graduating from UC San Diego with a degree in computer science. "The thing is, Mom," Daniel said, his eyes bright with excitement, "we need a significant angel investment to get this off the ground. We've got a working prototype. We've got interest from potential clients, but we need capital to scale. Real capital. We're looking for $200,000, Ashley added smoothly. We've already secured commitments from 2 other investors, but we need one more key partner to get us over the finish line. I sipped my wine slowly. That's a substantial amount. What kind of return are you projecting? For the next hour, they pitched me, and I'll give them credit, it was a good pitch. They had a business plan, market research, competitor analysis, financial projections. Daniel clearly knew his stuff from a technical standpoint. What I'd need, I said carefully, is to see everything in writing. Formal business plan, incorporation documents, the terms of the investment, equity structure, everything. Of course, Ashley said immediately. We wouldn't expect anything less from you. In fact, we've already had our lawyer draw up a partnership agreement. We can email it to you tonight. Something flickered across her face as she said this. It was fast, barely a microsecond, but after 30 years in the corporate world, I'd learned to catch those micro-expressions. It was the look of someone who thought they'd won. Perfect, I said, smiling. I'll review it with my attorney and we can discuss next steps. Ashley's smile tightened just slightly. Your attorney? Mom, we're family. This is a family investment. We don't need to involve outside lawyers and make this all complicated and formal. That's going to cost time and money that we don't have. We've got a limited window to secure this funding round. There it was, the pressure tactic. Time urgency combined with an appeal to family trust. I'd seen it 1,000 times in business negotiations, but I hadn't expected to see it at my son's dinner table. Ashley, honey, I said gently. I spent 3 decades in finance. I don't sign anything without legal review, not even for family. Especially not for family, actually. It protects everyone involved. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Mom's right, Ash, we should do this properly. Of course, Ashley backtracked quickly. I just meant we should keep the process moving quickly. We'll send everything over tonight. I left shortly after, claiming an early morning yoga class. In my car, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. My hands were shaking slightly, and it wasn't from the wine. The email arrived at 10:47 p.m. that night. I downloaded all the documents and sent them to my attorney, Marcus Yang, first thing Saturday morning with a note. Please review carefully. Something feels off. Marcus called me Monday afternoon. He'd been my lawyer for 15 years, handling everything from my retirement contract negotiations to my estate planning after Robert died. Margaret, we need to talk about these documents in person. Are you free this afternoon? We met at his office in downtown San Diego. Marcus spread the papers across his conference table, his face serious. These documents are very carefully crafted, he began. On the surface, they look legitimate, but buried in the fine print, and I mean really buried. In sections that seem like standard legal boilerplate, there are several concerning clauses. He pointed to a section on page 12. This clause here gives them the right to make unilateral decisions about company funds without partner approval. And this one on page 18? It allows them to transfer assets without your consent in certain emergency situations that are defined very broadly. So if I signed this, you'd be giving them $200,000, with essentially no control over how it's used and limited ability to recover it if things go south. There's also this clause about personal liability that's concerning. If the company racks up debt, you could be on the hook for far more than your initial investment. I felt cold. Is this criminal? It's borderline. It's definitely unethical. Whether it crosses into actual fraud would depend on their intent and what happens after you invest. But Margaret, my advice? Don't sign this, and be very careful around these people. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Daniel, about the little boy who used to curl up in my lap and read with me, who called me his best friend until he was 12. How had we gotten here? Tuesday morning, I made a decision. I called a private investigator named Margaret Chen that Marcus had recommended for another client once. We met for coffee in Carlsbad. I need to know what my son and his wife are really up to, I told her. And I need documentation. Sarah was in her 40s, former FBI, now running her own investigation firm. She didn't judge, didn't ask unnecessary questions. She just nodded. I'll need access to what you know, their names, addresses, business partners, anything relevant. And I'll need a retainer. I wrote her a check for $5,000. Whatever it takes. I need to know the truth. Meanwhile, I had to respond to Daniel and Ashley. I called them that evening. I've reviewed the documents with Marcus, I said carefully. There are some clauses I'm not comfortable with. Could we modify the partnership agreement? There was a pause on the other end. I was on speakerphone. I could hear the slight echo. What kind of modifications? Ashley's voice was tight. I'd like more oversight on how the investment capital is deployed, and I'm not comfortable with the personal liability clauses. Mom, Daniel sighed. You're overthinking this. These are standard terms. They're really not, honey. Marcus has reviewed hundreds of these agreements. These terms are unusual. Another pause. Then Ashley. Fine. We'll have our lawyer look at revising them. But Margaret, I have to tell you, this kind of skepticism from you is really hurtful. We're trying to build something here, And having you question every detail makes it feel like you don't trust us. The guilt trip. Another classic tactic. I do trust you, I lied. I just want to make sure we're all protected. It's what Robert would have wanted. Invoking my dead husband's name felt manipulative, but this was psychological warfare now, whether I wanted it to be or not. Over the next 2 weeks, something interesting happened. Daniel and Ashley became extremely attentive. They invited me to lunch, called to check in, sent me articles about the potential of their app concept. Ashley even apologized for her earlier comment about me suffocating them. I was stressed, she said over coffee in La Jolla. I didn't mean it. You know how much we value you, right? I smiled. I nodded. And every conversation I recorded on my phone. Sarah called me on a Wednesday afternoon. We need to meet. I found something significant. We met at a quiet restaurant in Del March. Sarah slid a folder across the table. Your son and daughter-in-law have done this before, she said quietly. Not successful attempts, but attempts. 3 years ago, before they married, Ashley was involved in a multi-level marketing scheme that collapsed. She convinced several people to invest, including an elderly man who lost $50,000. No charges were filed because the company claimed it was all legal. My stomach dropped. Daniel appears to have been clean until he met Ashley. But in the last 18 months, they've approached at least 4 other potential investors with various business schemes. None panned out. 2 of those investors backed out at the last minute, both citing concerns about the contract terms. She pulled out more documents. I also found these. They've been living well beyond their means. They're carrying significant credit card debt over $80,000. Their mortgage is underwater. And here's the interesting part. She showed me flight confirmations. They've been researching relocating to Costa Rica. No extradition treaty with the US for most financial crimes. I felt nauseous. You're telling me my son is planning to scam me and then flee the country? I'm telling you the evidence suggests they're planning to scam multiple people and then relocate. You're likely not the only target, but you're probably the biggest. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the documents. My son, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the toddler I'd taught to read, the teenager I'd guided through college applications. What about Jake? I whispered. Sarah's face softened. That's the question, isn't it? From what I can tell, they're planning to take him with them. But kids are resilient, and if you play this right, you might be able to protect him too. That night, I called Daniel. I've decided to invest, I said. Let's sign the papers this weekend. I want to support you and Ashley. I could hear the relief in his voice. Really? Mom, that's thank you. Thank you so much. We won't let you down. I know you won't, sweetheart. I believe in you. The lie tasted like ashes in my mouth. Friday afternoon, I received a panicked call from Ashley. Margaret, something terrible has happened. Daniel was in a car accident. He's at Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla. He's okay, but he's hurt, and the medical bills, we don't have enough insurance coverage. We need money immediately. Can you wire $50,000 today? My heart was pounding. This was it. The emergency they'd written into the contract, the clause that would let them access funds immediately without my approval. Oh my God, I gasped. Is he all right? Which room is he in? I'm coming right now. No, Ashley said quickly. I mean, you don't need to come. He's sedated and can't have visitors right now. We just need the money for the medical team. I'm coming anyway, I said firmly. Text me the room number. I hung up before she could protest. Then I made another call. Marcus, it's happening. Can you meet me at Scripps Memorial with Detective Rodriguez? I need them there in 30 minutes. I'd been in contact with the San Diego Police Department's fraud division for the past week, ever since Sarah had uncovered evidence of their previous scams. Detective James Rodriguez had been very interested in the recordings I'd made, the documents, the PI's findings. This might be enough for an arrest, he'd told me. But we need them to actually attempt the fraud. We need them to try to get money from you under false pretenses. Now we had it. I arrived at Scripps Memorial Hospital at 4:17 p.m. Marcus was waiting near the entrance with Detective Rodriguez and another officer. I walked in first, alone, following the text Ashley had sent with a room number. I found Ashley in the waiting room on the 3rd floor, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, but there was no Daniel in any hospital room. I'd already checked with the nurses' station. Ashley, I said softly. She looked up, startled. Margaret, did you wire the money? The doctors are saying, where's Daniel? He's in surgery. They wouldn't let me see him. Ashley, I checked with the nurses. There's no Daniel Chen registered at this hospital. There was no car accident. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally a strange kind of defiance. You're so paranoid, she hissed. This is exactly what I was talking about. You can't just trust your own son. You have to investigate everything, control everything. Mrs. Ashley Chen? Detective Rodriguez appeared with his badge out. I'm Detective Rodriguez with the San Diego Police Department. I need you to come with me. The color drained from Ashley's face. What? Why? I haven't done anything. We have evidence of attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and elder financial abuse. You have the right to remain silent. As the detective read Ashley her rights, Marcus appeared beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Daniel was picked up 20 minutes ago at their house. Sarah's investigator tipped us off that he was there, not at any hospital. I watched as they handcuffed Ashley. She was screaming now, insisting this was all a misunderstanding, that I was a vindictive old woman who couldn't stand to see my son happy. But the evidence was clear. The recordings of them laughing about the old lady's money, the contract designed to defraud, the fake emergency, the Costa Rica travel plans, the other victims Sarah had located who were willing to testify about similar schemes. What about Jake? I asked Marcus. Child Protective Services is at the house now. Given the circumstances, you're his closest relative. If you want temporary custody while this is sorted out. Yes, I said immediately. Yes, absolutely. Jake had been at a friend's house when his parents were arrested. I picked him up that evening, my heart breaking as I looked at his confused, scared face. Grandma, what's happening? Where are Mom and Dad? I took his hand. Come home with me, sweetheart. I'll explain everything, I promise. But right now you're safe and I'm here. That night, Jake and I sat in my living room overlooking the ocean. I'd made him hot chocolate, the fancy kind, with real chocolate and whipped cream, the way his grandfather used to make it. Your parents made some very bad choices, I told him gently. They tried to hurt people to get money. That's against the law, and now they have to face the consequences. Did they try to hurt you? He asked, his voice small. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. But I'm okay. And you're okay. That's what matters. He was quiet for a long time. Then, Grandma? I heard them talking sometimes, about money and moving away. I didn't really understand, but I knew something was wrong. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I pulled him close, this beautiful, perceptive child. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I've got you. The legal process was grueling. Daniel and Ashley were charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted elder abuse. The evidence was overwhelming: the doctored contracts, the recordings, the pattern of behavior, the fake emergency. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue that Ashley had manipulated him, that he was a victim too. But the recordings told a different story. In one particularly damning conversation, Daniel had joked about me. She's so desperate to be part of our lives, she'll sign anything. And once we have the money, we're gone. She'll never see it coming. Hearing that had broken something in me. Not my spirit, but something else. Some last remaining illusion that my son was still the person I thought I knew. They both took plea deals. Daniel got 3 years in a minimum security facility. Ashley got 5 years. As part of my victim impact statement, I requested that they be required to participate in financial counseling and therapy. I don't know if it will help, but I had to try. Jake stayed with me. The temporary custody became permanent when a judge reviewed the case and determined that the parents were unfit. Ashley's parents, who lived in Ohio, didn't contest it. They'd apparently given up on their daughter years ago. The first few months were hard. Jake had nightmares. He'd wake up crying, asking if I was going to leave him too. But slowly, gradually, we built a new normal. I enrolled him in a good school near my house. I taught him to surf, something I'd learned after Robert died, a way to handle grief. I showed him how to cook, really cook, not just the frozen dinners Ashley had relied on. And I talked to him honestly about money, about choices, about values. I opened a college savings account for him and showed him the statements, teaching him about compound interest and long-term planning. I wanted him to understand money, not fear it, not worship it, but understand it. 6 months after the arrests, Jake came to me with an envelope. I wrote something, he said shyly. For school, about heroes. Can you read it? I opened it and read. My hero is my grandma Margaret. When bad things happened, she didn't just cry or get angry. She made a plan. She was smart and brave, and she protected me. She always tells me that being smart isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing when to ask questions and when to get help. She says being strong isn't about never being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. I want to be like her when I grow up. I cried. I'm 63 years old. I've survived corporate battles and personal loss and betrayal by my own child, and I cried reading my 10-year-old grandson's essay. This is beautiful, Jake, I whispered. But you know what? You're already like that. You were brave too. You knew something was wrong. And even though you didn't know what to do, you paid attention. That matters. 1 year after the arrests, I received a letter from Daniel. It was forwarded through his lawyer. I'd made it clear I wasn't ready for direct contact. In the letter, he apologized. He claimed he'd been swept up in Ashley's schemes, that he'd lost his way, that he missed Jake and wanted to make things right. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have that conversation. But not yet. The wound is still too fresh, and I have Jake to think about now. Jake and I fell into a rhythm. Mornings. We'd have breakfast together. He liked making omelettes, competing to see who could flip theirs better. I'd drive him to school, then head to the gym or meet friends for coffee. I'd started volunteering with a local organization that helps seniors avoid financial fraud, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. Afternoons, I'd pick Jake up and we'd do homework together. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed math, helping him work through problems. Evenings, we'd cook dinner, watch movies, or walk on the beach near my house. Weekends, we'd explore. We'd drive up to LA for museum trips or east to the desert for hiking. We'd visit the San Diego Zoo, the tide pools at La Jolla Cove, the old missions scattered throughout California. I was teaching him about the world, yes, but he was teaching me too how to slow down, how to appreciate small moments, how to laugh again. He started calling me GM instead of Grandma, his own abbreviation that made both of us smile. Hey GM, can we get ice cream? GM, look at this cool rock I found. GM, thank you for everything. I updated my estate planning. Everything would go to Jake now, but in a carefully structured trust that would pay out gradually as he reached certain ages and milestones. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I was going to teach him financial responsibility before he inherited anything significant. On what would have been Robert's 68th birthday, Jake and I went to the beach at sunset. We'd started a tradition of releasing flowers into the ocean on special days, a way to remember and honor. Do you think Grandpa would be proud of me? Jake asked as we watched the flowers drift away on the tide. He'd be so proud of both of us, I said. He'd be proud that we didn't let difficult circumstances break us, that we chose each other and built something good. GM? Jake said thoughtfully. I've been thinking. When I grow up, I want to help people like you help people. Maybe I could be a lawyer or work with police to catch people who hurt families. I smiled. You could do that. You could do anything you set your mind to. But you know what matters most? Whatever you choose to do it with integrity. Your worth isn't measured by how much money you make or how successful you become. It's measured by how you treat people, especially when no one's watching. Recently, I received word that Ashley filed for divorce from prison. Daniel didn't contest it. I don't know what will happen when they're released. Whether they'll try to reconnect with Jake. Whether Daniel will have truly learned anything or if he'll just find new ways to be disappointing. But here's what I know. I didn't put myself first because Daniel and Ashley hurt me. I didn't establish boundaries because I was angry or vengeful. I did it because I finally realized something that took me 62 years to understand. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Family doesn't mean accepting manipulation. And being a good mother doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity, your intelligence, or your financial security for children who've chosen to betray those gifts. I put myself first because I'm worth it. Because Jake is worth having a grandmother who's strong and present and able to care for him. Because the best way to teach him about self-respect is to demonstrate it. Some people might think I was too harsh, that I should have given Daniel another chance before involving the police. That family should always come first, no matter what. But here's the truth those people don't understand. Protecting yourself isn't betraying your family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a firm boundary and enforce real consequences. And sometimes the family you build is different from the family you were born with, or the family you created. Sometimes family is a 10-year-old boy who calls you GM and makes you omelettes and writes essays about heroes. Sometimes family is chosen, not given. Last week, Jake and I were looking at colleges. He's only 11 now, but he likes planning ahead, imagining possibilities. We were talking about what he might want to study, where he might want to go. "I want to stay in California," he said. "Not too far from you. You should go wherever feels right," I told him. "I'll support you wherever you choose." "But Jake?" "Yeah, GM. Thank you for choosing me too, for letting me be part of your story. You've given me a second chance at so many things, at being a parent, at finding joy, at building a family that's based on real love instead of obligation or manipulation." He hugged me tight. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, GM." And standing there in my living room, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, with this remarkable child in my arms, I realized something. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest transformations. Sometimes losing everything you thought your family was opens the door to discovering what family actually means. I'm 63 now. I have a beautiful home, a healthy bank account, and a grandson who's teaching me that it's never too late for new beginnings. I have friends who support me, a purpose that drives me, and boundaries that protect me. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see someone who was suffocating her family. I see someone who was finally brave enough to breathe on her own terms. That's worth more than any amount of money. That's worth everything.